Hello everybody, welcome to the United Stand. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news as United reportedly prepare a world record bid for Elliot Anderson. I say a world record bid. It would be Manchester United's world record bid. We're not talking world record bid in relation to Real Madrid and everything like that, but we would break our record for a player on Elliot Anderson. We'll talk about that in a moment. Also, the huge, incredible amount of money we wasted on Ruben Amorim, north of £30 million in 12 months in recruitment and compensation of Ruben Amorim, i.e. paying Sporting and then what it costs to get rid of him. I mean, somebody should pay with their job. It shouldn't just be Amorim losing their job for that. Somebody else should be paying for their job. But also, incredibly, Manchester United could spend up to £300 million this summer as per the latest FFP changes. Will they spend it? And how does it impact on the manager that we could recruit this summer as well? Some really interesting stuff coming out this morning from numerous experts in the field as well. Plus, we've got updates on who the right back might be, what's going on with left winger, and a few other bits as well. But we've got a poll. Welcome to the weekend, by the way. It is Friday, which means we've got press conference with Carrick at lunchtime, and then we've got the preview live at 8 o'clock tonight with me. But fascinating story coming in this morning around Elliot Anderson. Manchester United would be willing to break their transfer record to sign Elliot Anderson. Numerous reports, I'll give you the exact wording in a moment, but of course our record is £89 million for Pogba. So you're approaching £100 million. So we've got a little bit of a poll going on this morning. Would you spend £100 million on Elliot Anderson? You're damn bloody right I would. You're damn right. Damn right. I mean, I said it about Morgan Rogers yesterday. I don't really know why I got up and did the walk, but I just needed to express my damn right I would. That's my opinion, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But it is interesting. Let me just read you about it. So, with Casemiro set to leave this summer, Man United have identified Elliot Anderson as their preferred replacement. United are prepared to break their club record fee, surpassing the £89 million paid for Paul Pogba to strike a deal with Nottingham Forest. Now, of course, we have to say that there has been reports in the past that it might be less than £80 million. Ben Jacobs himself said it a few months ago. However, Forest and other people still keep circulating that this would take a lot of money to get him. Now, if you didn't see Forest play against Fenerbahce last night, it was another fantastic performance to add to the many fantastic performances Elliot Anderson has had this season. And if you remember, when we went back to the start of September, we spoke about Elliot Anderson, we spoke about Adam Wharton, and we spoke about Carlos Baleba, and we said this season is basically an audition. It's an audition. And I think that realistically, because it's an audition, we've seen what they've done. I think Baleba has failed, fluffed his lines. I think Wharton's done reasonably well. And I think Anderson has been fantastic week in, week out. So to be the number one choice, I think that it would be very interesting to see if United can get this over the line. And if it's going to be a record bid, which many people are saying, then the question is, should Manchester United do that? Now, there's some really interesting stuff coming out this morning, and I will get into it. The brilliant Swedish Rumble. It's an account on X. So look, the headlines from it. There's a few things about it, really. One thing that I think is disgusting, by the way, is that Manchester United this season have pocketed the same amount of matchday revenue during 10 home games as we did last season during 15 home games. So the quarter of the financials that came out the other day was for, was it the quarter of September to December, I think it was. So within that time, I think that it's realistically very difficult to say how have Man United in 10 games made what they made in 15 games last year. So basically we've had 10 games in the period where we had 15 games last year from September to December, and we've made the same money. In plain English, we're selling tickets and hospitality for a lot more than we did last year. And not by a small margin. Swedish Rumble says approximately 35% more. So, on one hand, some people might look at it and go, well, that's good. The club have, made up a deficit, but who's paying for it? I think it's disgusting. But I'll come back to that a little bit later. But basically, we've made the same money from 10 home games than we made from 15 games last year. And you're paying for it. However, the big thing I wanted to talk about in relation to Elliot Anderson is that the wage bill this season is the lowest it's ever been in the last 10 years for Manchester United. And we're in the bracket at the moment with the likes of Newcastle, Villa and Tottenham. Between 170 and 200 million pounds is where Man United's wage bill is going to sit. Liverpool are currently around 300 million and Man City are around 310. So our wage bill at the moment is ridiculously low. Ridiculously low. So it still comes back to this though. How much could Man United spend this summer according to Swedish Rumble? Well, we could spend around £340 million. Around £340 million this summer could be spent by Manchester United. So there's two things there, isn't there? And I think it's really interesting in relation to Elliot Anderson, but it's also really interesting in relation to everything. We could spend £340 million this summer, according to Swedish Rumble, but our wage bill keeps dropping down. Is that not hypocritical? Does that not give you a guide that might not happen? So what I'm saying is, we could spend £300 million this summer. Swedish Rumble's been through the books. I'm sure some other experts have. There's leeway for Man United to spend £300 million this summer, if we get Champions League football, of course. So £300 million is quite a lot of money. You could get 2-3 midfielders there. You could get a left winger, left back. £300 million, you'd get those players, I think. So we could do that. Doesn't mean we will. I'll explain that in a minute, but we could do that. But then the wage bill is coming down to a level of Spurs, Newcastle and Aston Villa. So how do you spend that money? You've got £300 million, but you're not going to go above a certain wage structure. Is that not hypocritical? I don't know how that's going to work. So you could knock on the door of Elliot Anderson and say, here's £100 million for Elliot Anderson to Nottingham Forest, which is what we're talking about. But then when you speak to Elliot Anderson, you're going to go, we're not going to give you more than 180 grand a week. And then Man City go, well, we'll give you 250 grand a week. And I think this is where there's almost like the hypothetical what we can spend is fantastic, but is the club behaving in a way that you think they will? And I think this is where it can be a bit of a head mess. So Elliot Anderson record transfer bid, we've clearly got the money to do it, but have we got the owners to do it? It's contradictory. That's what it is, Mank. So I think it's really interesting. And look, the foundations are the good news is when you read through all the financials, and somebody who I think is fantastic when it comes to this and really good at breaking it down for simpletons like us, Manchester United can spend a total of approximately 340 million during the summer of 2026. But our wage bill is coming down to the levels of Newcastle, Villa and Spurs. So it's contradictory, as somebody said. And effectively, it goes on to say, how much do you think we will spend? Probably around 260. Probably around 260, but could be up to 300. So look, in a way, it's great news because we know that the club has money to spend, but it reminds me a little bit of Spurs a few years ago. I remember FFP, Spurs could spend £300 million. They never got anywhere near it. Because can spend doesn't mean you do spend. I had a great auntie who used to bury her money like a fucking squirrel. In fact, she was nuts as well. But she had loads of money. Loads of money. And she could have bought a Rolls Royce if she wanted to. She drove around in a mini metro. Just because you can spend money doesn't mean you do. You could give £1 million to me and I'd go, we're going on a holiday to Magaluf, everybody. Let's book the flights. You could give £1 million to somebody else and they could go, yeah, well, we're not going to spend it. So the reality is that just because we can spend doesn't mean we will spend. And with this ownership, I'd look at that wage structure dropping down, and I'd be quite concerned about that, because if you've got £300 million to spend, how are you spending that money if you're not going to give anybody more than 200 grand a week? You could buy 10 players with £300 million and pay them all 150 grand a week. You could do that. You could spend the 300 million that way. You could buy 10 players who are worth 30 million pounds and give them 100 to 150 grand a week, and that's absolutely fine. But you could also buy 3 players worth 100 million pounds each who want 300 grand a week, and I don't think we'll do that. That's my point. Whether I've put it across properly or not, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But that's the contradiction for me. We can spend up to 300 million pounds apparently. Whether we will or not is something to be said, but let's imagine we do. But you've still got to pay the wages. And United don't want to get that wage bill up. They just want to drive it down and down and down and down. And on the wage bill, by the way, it is interesting just to read you some of this sort of stuff. The wage bill is at the centre of things. Since United has reduced its wage significantly after the 21-22 season, United paid a total of 75 million in wages during the second quarter. A little bit more than expected, but still lowest figure for a second quarter since the 17-18 season. This indicates that the total wage cost for all employees will be approximately 300 million, and of that, approximately 110 is paid to non-players, leaving approximately 190 million for the playing squad. This puts United very far behind the top 4. Arsenal's player wage bill will be above 230 million and right in the same territory as Newcastle, Villa and Tottenham, which is where Manchester United will be, which is approximately 110 million pounds behind Liverpool's wage bill and 120 million pounds behind Manchester City's. Even with the 25% Champions League wage increase, United's wage policy is not competitive with City and Liverpool, regardless of what guesstimates of Capology say. So the reality is that our wages are not competitive. Simple as that. But this I find disgusting, and some people might find this boring. I think this is incredible. I think it's again, you have to call out potential client journalism. You have to ask why the mainstream aren't doing anything about it. We live in a world where everybody's got an opinion on everything, whether it's left, right or centre, and people are very passionate about it, and people protest about it, and they post about it, and they say this isn't fair and that isn't fair, and this is wrong and that is wrong. Well, football, this is wrong. This is very wrong. We have in this country, and I'm sure in your country as well, a cost of living crisis. You drive around the roads, there's potholes everywhere, there's poverty, people can't afford to send kids to school with food, all problems that every country will have. But Manchester United Football Club used to be a football club for the working class. That's what football is. It's a working class sport, even in my lifetime, and I know people say I'm old, but in the late 80s, football wasn't the Premier League and it's live. It wasn't families. It was a very different football. And I loved it, and I still do love it, but it was a very different football. It was very working class, very male orientated, and, a lot of kids went to the football with the dad. And, that's how it was. And you might not have a lot of money, but you could afford to go. What's happened to football is it's become this mercenary sport where I think a lot of people are priced out of taking their kids to watch football. And also, not even their kids, I think a lot of people are priced out of going to watch football. And this disgusts me, because if this is true, and I've got no reason to say that it isn't, as I was touching on there, Manchester United, we should have lost more money than we have this season. And in one way, it's really good that we haven't, because we've made the same amount of money from 10 home games than we did from 15 last year. But when you break that down, that's incredible. 10 games against 15. That's a third less games this season than we've had at home than last season, and yet we've made the same money. So we've increased our revenue on a third left. Well, we've not increased it. We've stabilised the revenue on 1/3 less games, 5 games less. And we've done that by raising prices that you pay for. And the percentage increase in ticket prices and hospitality is incredible. And it's not being spoken about. It's an absolute piss take. This season, isn't any better than last season. All right, recently the results have improved, but in the main, we're not in Europe. We've been knocked out of both cups. We're fighting for, third, fourth, or fifth, or sixth. And we've increased prices. It's great business, Ken Shambles, and it just shows you how it will be very difficult to get rid of this ownership, because you could say, and I saw somebody online saying, morons for paying it. But it just shows you that it doesn't really matter what they do. People will keep going and paying those prices. What a business to have. It doesn't matter what you do, you can knock the prices up. People will still turn up. And I don't know how much it's hit people in the pocket, because season ticket holders surely won't have an increase in their price across the season. This would be match day tickets. But that is incredible to me, that we've made the same amount of money from 10 games that we made from 15 last year. And we'd have been selling out last year. I remember taking Seb last season in the same period. I think we went in September. It wasn't cheap. So what would that have been this September? So, some people will sit there and go, I don't care, we've made some money. But they've made the money. Billionaires making money out of you, and also depriving people of football. Absolutely. I know people who live hand to mouth. Like, at the end of the month, they're waiting to be paid. There's no leeway on, there's 100 quid we didn't spend this month. Like, people are, they're not poor, but they're living within their means. If Man United increased their tickets by 30, 40, 50 quid, you ain't going. You're not going. So, there's a moral question there as well, that we're just pricing people out. It's wrong. Absolutely wrong. But that's Man United, business, mercenary. That's what we do. And then you flip that, though. You knew I was going here. You flip that with this article that Simon Stone's put out today. So, this is disgusting, right? So, we're increasing ticket prices to cover off United's ineptitude. So, you, the fans, are paying to make this club for the mistakes. So, the increase in ticket prices isn't your fault. You didn't pick the team, you didn't recruit Amorim, you didn't buy the flops, you didn't give the stupid wages out, you didn't sack half the workforce. You had no decision at all, but you pay for those mistakes. Factually, we've just spoken about the increase in ticket prices, which is helping the club survive. So you are helping the club survive. But then you read this. The combined charges for Ruben Amorim could cost £37 million. So recruiting Amorim from Sporting and sacking him in 14 months could cost £37 million and will comfortably cost 20. And you look at the ticket price increases and you look at the cost of that and you go, you're literally paying because Wilcox, Barada and Ineos can't do their job. Like 20 to 30 million pounds going out the club on an Amorim mistake, and ticket prices are going up. And this is the crazy thing about this football club, is on the one hand, they can ruthlessly cut the player wage bill, sack people, and on the other hand, they can spew 20, 30 million on an Amorim mistake. And there's some interesting stuff in here, because it basically says that the cost of Amorim was not put into the profits that came out this week of £32 million. Manchester United paid Sporting 11 million to hire Amorim to replace Ten Hag. So we paid 11 million to get Amorim out of Sporting. Ten Hag cost us 10 million to sack. So it's 21 million to sack Ten Hag and recruit Amorim. 21 million back in November 2024. It's then going to cost us another potential 16 million to sack Amorim. And it could go up to 25. Mad numbers. Absolutely mad numbers. And, you know, it just blows your mind how bad some of the decisions that we make. And then I bring it back to could we spend £100 million on Elliot Anderson? Oh, yeah, we can. The numbers are there to do it. But the contradiction is they're cutting the wage bill. But it fits in with the manager, because if we can spend technically £300 million on transfers, how much could we spend on a manager? And this is something that it was well worth waiting to this point in the show if you've worked your way through it. Because no one will talk about this. It's always Man United could spend £300 million on transfers this summer, and people start going, we could get this, that and the other. You know what I thought instantly when I read that United could spend £300 million this summer? The money has to be there, of course, but, you know, by the law, they could spend £300 million. If you can spend £300 million on players, you can spend some of that on a manager. You can. It's so logical, isn't it? And no one ever talks about it. If you can spend £300 million on players, that means you've got £300 million. So you could spend that on a manager. You could spend 250 on players and spend, well, no, you could spend 270 on players and use 30 to get a really good manager out of his contract and come to Manchester United. I mean, look, when I say we could spend £300 million, that's what the law says, FFP, PSR, whatever it's called. By the way that we've balanced our profits and the way we've run our accounts, the leeway is there to spend £300 million. There ain't no way Ineos and the Glazers are going to want to spend that £300 million. They're going to want to pay off some debt interest. They're going to want to keep some in the bank and pay off this, that and the other. So, look, just because, as I said, going back to the great aunt and her nuts, just because you can spend £300 million doesn't mean you will spend £300 million. But the fact is we can, and we could, and we should. But it also means with that amount of leeway, you can go and buy a really good manager. But they won't. They won't do it, will they? Because they'll see Amorim has cost them north of £20 million in 14 months. And because they made that fuck up, they'll go, well, we don't want to do that again. And that's the mentality of an idiot. Because it's like being in a relationship with somebody that you thought was the love of your life. And it doesn't work out. And then you go, well, I'm not trying girls again. And start listening to, I don't know. Well, I probably shouldn't say that. But the point is, you know, you can't give up on girls just because one's a bad apple. You go out and try again. You don't change direction completely. You don't go, well, Amorim was expensive, so let's go cheap. The money is clearly there to go and get a Luis Enrique or an Emery or a Tuchel or a Nagelsmann. And that, for me, is all I'm interested in. From reading the stuff this morning, that's all I'm interested in. You know, the money is there if we want to go and spend it on players and managers. If those accounts said we can only spend £100 million this year because of FFP, we'd be in big trouble. It's basically saying we can spend 300. And that means we could go and get a manager if we wanted to. Whether they'll do it or not, look, you make your own mind up. My theory is we are reducing our wage bill and we're trying to be cheap and everything we do. I don't imagine Man United in the summer going, there's 30 million, let's go and get the best manager we can get. There's 270 million, let's go and get the best 4 players we can get and pay them what they deserve. I don't think that's going to be the policy. I think the policy is going to be the cheapest manager we can get, and we will spend the money, but we won't break the wage structure. And I think that's the worry for me, if I'm being completely honest. Back to Anderson. Would you spend 100 million on Anderson? 54% of you say no. 46% of you say, yeah, I've had enough. I've had enough of this. I've had enough of this shit. Absolute idiots. Why do I bother? I could have been bloody walking the dog. I could have cut the grass. 54% of you wouldn't spend £100 million on Elliot Anderson. What the fuck are you on about? Why do I bother? Why do I bother? What? Why? Why? What is it you're waiting for? We've been infiltrated by bots. 54% of you wouldn't spend £100 million on Elliot Anderson. Declan Rice, £100 million. Enzo Fernandez, £100 million. Caicedo, £100 million. Brighton, Benfica, West Ham. Why wouldn't you? You've been indoctrinated into the Glazer school of idiots. Why? It's not your money. It's not your bloody money. He is a premium player. It's not about what he's worth. That's not how football works. If there's only one Ferrari left in London and 5 people want a Ferrari and the price is 200 grand and somebody says, I'll give you 500 grand and it's yours. So, no, the owner says it's 500 grand and it's yours and you go, I'm not paying that, it's not worth it. You don't get a Ferrari. You pay the premium for what's available. One good season for £100 million. Mate, he didn't drop out his mum's chuff in bloody August. He's been playing for football for longer than that. You know what? I give up. You deserve to fight for 5th every fucking year. Literally the player that Man City want to drop in their midfield for the next 5 years. Man City want, and we've got people going, nah. Let City spend £100 million. I mean, that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. Man City will pay the 100 million and give him 300 grand a week. And we've got 54% of our fan base going, nah, I like being shit. I like it. I like being rubbish. I like the ticket prices going up and buying shit like Belabor. Come on. Come on. What would you do then? You know what? I'm intrigued here. What would you do? So right, okay, it's £100 million or you don't get Elliot Anderson. What are you going to do? He's not worth that, says Bro. Oh my God, I can't deal with it. You're ruining my weekend. You're ruining my weekend. I've been looking forward to it all week and you're ruining my weekend. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What are you going to do then? Tonali wants to go to Italy. Oh, so let me get my head around this. You won't pay £100 million for Elliot Anderson, but you will pay £80 million for Tonali. Oh, I just don't get it. I don't get it. Look, calm down. It's a democracy. It's a democracy. Literally, like, he might be cheaper than that, but in reality, that's the price. That's a fair price. The market literally dictates £100 million. Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, Declan Rice, all coming from clubs in the bottom half of the table, going to a bigger club. The market literally dictates it, unless it's Belabor and no one wants him. Like 4 or 5 top clubs want Elliot Anderson. That's the price. So if you, I thought we were all on the same page. I thought we all wanted Elliot Anderson, and now people are going only for 60. What the fuck? I mean, the price is dictated to by supply and demand. It's simple economics. He will go for £100 million unless there is some sort of clause that he can't. I would do it. I would do it. I think you're talking about a player that evidentially, statistically, and on the eye test is one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. He is the next Semenyo. He is the next Gahey. There's literally 3 players in the Premier League this season that you know are starlets ready to go to the next level. Gahey at Crystal Palace, Semenyo at Bournemouth, and Anderson at Forest. They're literally the 3. That's why Man City want all 3. I wouldn't look. Someone just said, "Would you pay 120 million?" Look, I'd pay 150 million pounds for Cole. All right. Here we go. All right, okay. 53% wouldn't pay 100 million pounds. 47% would. Here's one. We'll be here till 4 o'clock. Me doing this. You're blowing my mind. Would you pay 150 mil for Cole Palmer? I can't wait to see the answer to this one. Bew says, is Elliot Anderson Declan Rice? That's my issue. They're not the same person. I don't want to disagree. No, look, Declan Rice at West Ham was very good. Elliot Anderson at Nottingham Forest is very good. They're both starting for England. They're different players. I don't think you can tell Declan Rice at West Ham is better than Elliot Anderson at Nottingham Forest. I think what you're doing is you're seeing what Declan Rice has done at Arsenal. And that's unfair. We're talking about Declan Rice at West Ham compared to Elliot Anderson at Nottingham Forest, and I see no difference. Not taking the piss, I don't see any difference. Declan Rice was good at West Ham, but I don't think he's any better than Elliot Anderson is at Nottingham Forest. But Declan Rice at Arsenal is world class, and I think that's clouding your issue here. Same with Caicedo at Brighton. He was decent at Brighton, but he wasn't what he is at Chelsea. I'd say Elliot Anderson's better than Caicedo was at Brighton. Enzo Fernandez at Benfica was decent, but I wouldn't say he's any better than what you're doing is you're looking at Enzo, Caicedo and Rice and how they're performing now and going, well, they're better than Elliot Anderson. Well, they are now because they've had the move and they've had the glow up. When you take them back to where they were bought for £100 million, there's no difference at all. There's no difference between Elliot Anderson and Declan Rice at West Ham. There's no difference between Caicedo at Brighton and Elliot Anderson at West Ham, at Forest. There's not. People are just judging them on where they are now, and of course they're ahead of him because they've had the move, they've had the glow up. You can't put a price on chips, says Doug, and buy all Brentford midfielders. That's the solution, says JBS. I will do the Mbermo and the Cunha, says Mixon. You're having a laugh. I don't know who you think Elliot is, says Sully. Well, I've got eyes, I've got stats, and I've got, you know, what the going rate is. Daniel Thompson says, the rise in ticket prices is awful. People have to pay more for less. Quality is appalling. United is more than a club. It's a family for everyone. The fans are paying for the ownership's errors. It's abysmal. I'll be stunned. Well, we never hear from the Manchester United Supporters Trust. I never notice anything from... in fact, let me be fair. Maybe they post every week. I don't hear anything from... I never see anything from the Manchester United Supporters Trust. The 58 say stuff. I'm sure they will be saying stuff about this. It's disgusting. We're pricing out. I don't want Old Trafford full of hooray Henrys quaffing champagne, shoving prawn sandwiches down their throat. I look at like the Stretford end and our away support and they might not like the United stand, that's fine. But I still look at our away support and the Stretford end and the flags this year. They are the lifeblood of Manchester United Football Club. They are the atmosphere. We should be expanding that around Old Trafford, not contracting it. That's the modern Manchester United. You look at our away support, you look at the Stretford end, and we should be making that bigger. We should be promoting that. You know, that's the fans we want. We want that atmosphere to get bigger. We want that. And they're contracting them with bloody hospitality and people that are willing and can afford to spend silly money to watch Brentford play Man United at Old Trafford. We're pricing those people out. Now, is that a tactic? Yes, of course it's a fucking tactic. You know what? If Darren and Carl, who got their own painter-decorator business, working, 6 days a week, all hours, money's okay, they're getting by, prices go up by 30%, can't afford to go to United anymore. But old Steve and Monty, the accountants, they can afford to do it because they like the social aspect of it. Goodbye, Carl and Darren. Lifelong United fans who want to go and sing and, really enjoy it. And hello, Cliff and Monty, who want to sit there on their phones and quaff champagne and eat. That's what United want. They want Cliff and Monty. They don't want Darren and Carl. But I want Darren and Carl. And Sue and Carol. Why not them? I don't want bloody Agatha and Bridget, and that's it's so morally wrong what's happening at Manchester United and probably other clubs as well. We're contracting the fans we love for the bloody hooray Henrys who can afford it but don't really get it. It's disgusting. Disgusting what's happening. And it's happening right in front of our eyes. A bargain on deal would be for players and manager, 300 million, says Amit. Look, I'd happily spend £250 million this summer and spend 30 on a really top-class manager. Because you know what? If you give £350 million worth of players to De Zerbi, but you give £250 million worth of players to Enrique or Emery or Nagelsmann, we'll do better. Even though he gets less money, we'll do better. And that's an equation I'm willing to argue with anyone. Selka says, Carrick it is then. Issue isn't cutting the wage bill. Wage bill should match quality of the squad. Average issue is they won't pay the wages when the right players come along, says Cameron. I think this is a great point, Cameron. And it's a great point. You're absolutely correct. If you look at the squad now and the wage bill, it probably should be about £120 million behind Man City. There's not many people in that squad who justify a high wage. Bruno. Look, honestly, is there a player in this squad who deserves more than 200 grand a week? No. Bruno Fernandes, that's it. There are some that have got that, Mason Mount, but the vast majority don't. So the wage bill probably should come down based on quality. But the concern is exactly like Cameron says. We won't want to go above that because they're business people and they don't have a bloody clue. I would be there saying, look, okay, let's get the wage bill down so everybody's below 200 grand a week. But when this player comes up and we buy them, he needs 300 grand a week. Well, we're not doing that. Why? Because I don't want it to go any higher than that. Well, we'll hit a ceiling then. We won't compete. You have to pay the right wage for the quality. And that's going to be the interesting thing. And we'll find out this summer. Because if we keep buying young players, you don't have to pay a high wage. And this is why we want players under 26. Because people over 26 want a good wage. Anderson, 85 million, still at 70 million. Diamonde, 80 million, equals 230, says Amit. Still, it won't cost 70. I don't think Diamonde will cost 80 either. Plus, also, Amit, that's not how transfers work anymore. You don't just add the transfer fee up. Because remember, I could buy Elliot Anderson for 100, but only pay 25 this year and 25 next year. Another thing that worries me is that even if we hit in all our signings, 3 or 4, there's still many holes in the squad, and I doubt Wilcox does it right, says Mason. I'm just looking at the poll. I'm getting angry. Amit says getting Anderson is contingent on a successful roadmap, and no Champions League, no Anderson, no 340 million spend, says Claire Jones. Oh, she's back again. Look, Claire, I was going to be nice to you and say Claire's the sort of name I want at Old Trafford, not Cleopatra. But I tell you what, I'd ban all Claires as well because of this Claire. She's a rage-baiting, boring named person. Nearly said something rhymes with itch. Do you see us buying potential relegation player? Claire, I just want to say, Claire, I'm having a bit of a laugh. As I hope you are. I hope you're not being serious, because if you are, you know, no one else is. Seb says, do you see us buying potential relegation players? And if so, which would you take? The likes of Murillo, Anderson, Diouf, Fernandes, Gomez, Porro, Sarr, Mane. Well, they're probably on cheap wages, so why not? I like Bergvall. I don't know whether Spurs will get relegated, though. I like Anderson if Forest go down. West Ham, that Fernandes does look okay, but I want quality. I want quality. The wages for everyone in the squad will go up as well if we get Champions League. That straight away means that any transfer budget gets cut. I wouldn't be surprised if we get more than 4 players again this summer, says Patrick. Look, I can see a scenario where you spend £300 million, you get a really good manager in, and things start to get better. I can see a scenario where you buy 4 players, like Patrick says, you give the job to Carrick or De Zerbi, and things get worse. That doesn't mean it's Carrick or De Zerbi's fault. What I'm saying is they'd be cheap. So it could be Glasner, could be Iriola. You go for the cheap manager, you don't give them enough players, they're inexperienced anyway, they don't have the quality, and they sink, like Amorim. Or you could spend money on really good players, bring a really good manager in, and we'll get better. That's the balance. Take your pick. Spending 100 million on Anderson is wrong, says Jared. Maximum we spend on him is 75. Anything more is overspend, just my opinion. Why do you care about overspend? Since when were you a shareholder of Manchester United or an accountant, Jared? I'm not picking on you, but why do you care? So, Jared, Elliot Anderson says, I want to come to Manchester United, but Man City have offered 100 million. You've offered 75. If you don't offer 100, I can't come because they've accepted Man City's offer. But if you offer 100, I can because they'll accept your offer. Jared says no. So where do we go instead of Elliot Anderson? And we'll always know we could have got him for 100. Maybe it's experience, maybe it's stupidity, but Like, I don't give a shit about £25 million if it's the right player. Because if you then go and spend 70 on Wharton and he's a flop, you've cost yourself £70 million. You could have spent 25 to make sure you get a real hit. The huge spend does not justify the low wages, mate, says Amit. And what if United told Baleba to play poor to drive the price down? Or we're idiots, and he's an idiot, and he's unreliable. I'd rather spend 100 million on 3 midfielders, says JB. Tell me who they are. And Anderson will pay back that 300 million, says Ray. I think he's worth it. 100's too much. We get Mbeumo and Cunha for 60 and 65, says Stelios. I tell you what, Stelios, I'd love you to go and do the negotiations with Nottingham Forest. So you walk in and you go, we're not giving you £100 million because we only paid 65 for Mbeumo and Cunha. See you later then. End of conversation. Because they will say, Declan Rice, Caicedo, £100 million. Man City have got a £100 million offer on the table. If you don't want to pay it, you're wasting my time. Get out. You walk out with your moral code. You walk out with nothing. Good business, pal. Cola Cherry, what a name. And hey, Holo, welcome to the Members Club. Thanks for getting your badge in. Fantastic show this morning. Nearly 7,000 watching. Please share the video. Stelios says Casemiro's 350k a week gone. Plenty for Anderson. Oh, the money's there by the sounds of it. It's whether we're going to spend it, Stelios. Anderson could be Baleba, 1 year wonder, says JBS. It's not, mate, he was playing football last season. Why? It's like the Pratts who say, well, we should sack half our workforce because Liverpool only employ 500 people. You can literally type it into Gemini and every other thing. Liverpool employ 1,100 people. People just make stuff up and then believe it. He hasn't had one good season. He was literally playing well last year. Man United got linked to Elliot Anderson on September the 1st, at the start of the season. So you're telling me when we got linked to Elliot Anderson on September the 1st, when the window closed, he hadn't even played football? He played well last season. He just we didn't approach him like we approached Baleba. Elliot Anderson has been spoken about as a mover from Forest since last summer. He was in the England squad in September. What did Thomas Tuchel do? Oh, I've heard this player called Elliot Anderson. He's never kicked a ball before, but come on down. Come and play for England. Both would be perfect for those prices. They're ready to get rid of some of our players anyway, says Nicholas. 100 million is the new 60 million in modern football. Don't agree with it, but it is what it is. Harv, I completely agree. And Game King says, don't we need quality over quantity or quantity over quality in terms of players? Not saying to buy crap players, but 100 million players would eat up the budget fast. To be clear, I want Anderson if at all possible. I don't mind that. It's the best thing you've said all day. I don't mind that comment. I don't mind that comment. More of those. That's intelligent. If you spend £100 million on Anderson, how much is left to get other players? I do agree with that. But it's not my fault that the club have briefed every big journalist for months that they want Elliot Anderson. And that leads us to look at Elliot. I've watched him a lot this season. I'm sure many of you have. And I look at him and I go, perfect. Going forward, defensively, energy, age, experience, plays for England. He ticks every single box. Premier League proven. So I completely agree that he should be our priority. And we're now going to walk away because he's too much money. I don't know how you glaze Gyökeres. He only scores tap-ins, which has got nothing to do with this show, Charlie. We paid 90 million to bring Pogba back 10 years ago. Yet you lot won't pay 10 million more for one of the most exciting English midfielders in Europe, says Judd. Ever heard of the saying, putting all your eggs in one basket? We'll get Anderson and nothing else, says Sweet Cheeks. Ever heard of the saying, you get what you pay for? We can all come up with sayings. We can all come up with sayings. One up the bum, no harm done. You know. Don't know where. I've never heard that one before. Don't try it out. I think it was on The Office. That's what she said. You know, there's all sorts of sayings. They don't necessarily mean anything, do they? Oh, look at this. Here we go. Here we go again. Fabrizio Romano. Would you pay £150 million for Cole Palmer? Obviously, not many people who've watched The Office there. Would you pay £150 million for Cole Palmer? 30% of you, yes. 70% of you, no. Why, pray tell me why you wouldn't buy one of the best attacking midfielders in European football for £150 million if that was the price set by Chelsea. Please tell me, because I can't wait to hear this. Why wouldn't you pay it? Why not? Presuming Bruno's gone and we need to sign a number 10. So we haven't got Cunha, we haven't got Bruno. There's nobody else who can play there instead. Would you sign Cole Palmer for £150 million? Why wouldn't you? I mean, I just don't get it. What it is. I don't understand why. What's your allergic reaction to top quality players and paying what they're worth? I mean, look, it's not the same as Elliot Anderson because we do need a midfielder and there is massive competition for him. Cole Palmer is more hypothetical, but he's 23. He's, top quality player. Would tear it up at Manchester United. Look, if Chelsea said you can have him for £150 million, I'd find the money. If Bruno left, you take £60 million of Bruno and you find 90 million yourself. Yeah, I'll do that. I'd do that. There's too many accountants in this fan base, like Chris Ryan says. Too many of you have been indoctrinated into this weird obsession. Not all of you. Some of you might just not like Cole Palmer. But there is definitely a cult of Glazers where our fan base, some of them, really like to knock one out to the wage bill coming down and also act like they're director of football and go, well, I do want this player, but I'm not paying another 10 million for him. Genuinely couldn't give a shit. Like when we signed Harry Maguire for 80 million, I was like, fucking hell, he ain't worth that. That's a lot more than he's worth. So I understand that. Like, but if it's in and around, I mean, look, I said in the summer, pay £80 million for Baleba with 20 million in add-ons. I mean, I'm glad we bloody didn't do it, but if we wanted to do the deal, that's what Brighton wanted 100. So I was like, give them 80 plus 20. United never had the money. Now I know that looks really stupid now, but United started talks for a player that was really exciting, and we needed a midfielder, and I knew Brighton wanted 100, so I was like, give them 80 plus 20. It would have been a mistake, but I didn't flinch at that because I knew that's what it was going to take. That was the price. We didn't do it in the end, thank bloody God. But look, everybody, it's not my money. And also, we're not accountants. And the only people it benefits walking away from deals that we should do is the Glazers. Because they keep the money and they keep the, they pay their interest and everything like that. I'd rather spend 150 million on Musiala, not saying don't spend, I just have preferences. There's nothing wrong with that. I think the way some people act, though, if I said you can get Erling Haaland for 175 million, people would say no. And I'd be like, I'd pay 170 million pounds for Erling Haaland. I mean, the guy's an absolute machine. You put him up front, he's going to score shitloads of goals. He's going to, it's worth it. People forget what bench used to look like, says Sir Radcliffe. JBS says Cunha and Mbeumo 60 to 65 million should be example proven love for the club. Spend 100 million plus is overrated. Give me Cunha and Mbeumo all day for every position. Yeah, I agree with you, JBS, but you can't dictate the market on Cunha and Mbeumo. They came from Brentford and Wolves as play, and there wasn't a hell of a lot of competition. We're talking about midfielders go for £100 million if they're decent. That's the price. I think, and I hope we can get him for less than 100, but if it comes to it, pay the fee as you're paying for top quality, and we need that, says Daniel. We need quality in. Look, I think we've got... I worry about it. I don't know how you compete with Man City. Maybe the court case will help us, but we have to get that player. I think it's a defining player for Manchester United. It feels to me a little bit like Bruno Fernandes that we have to get this player. I'd rather done that one. Scouts should be able to find players pre-glow-ups as Keel. Well, that's a great point, but they don't. If we pay more for Elliot than Mbeumo, we're crazy, says Sully. Well, we're not. We're not. I've literally just explained that. you can't compare Mbeumo from Brentford to Elliot Anderson from Forest. Different positions, different competition, different price guidelines based on previous sales. It's just like goalkeepers don't really cost as much, do they? Forest will look for 100 million, says Patrick, because if they get relegated, it'll be windfall. It's not just the market value. I suspect and hope that 100 million pounds won't be the price for Elliot Anderson, because if they get relegated, I would imagine the relegation clause will allow people to, manipulate that down. If Anderson goes for 100 million, let's do it. But I'd rather go and buy Stiller, the Dortmund midfielder, and maybe an experienced midfielder from Europe, says Jared. Look, alternatives to Elliot Anderson, Stiller and Enmicha, to me, would be a good idea, but they're both from the Bundesliga, and I don't know whether the club would have the appetite to do that. I think both would adapt to the Premier League really well. I agree in principle, but these are the kind of luxury signings you make when you're top of the league, not building a squad from mid-table. Yeah, but sweet cheeks, did Arsenal not do that with Declan Rice? They spent £100 million on a player that they weren't near winning the league, and then he's sort of been the core of that team to go to that level. All good opinions, though. All good opinions. I've loved the show this morning. We've not had 1,000 likes, which is amazing because I've put a lot of effort into the show this morning, and so have you. So please do smash a like on the video. What about the left back or right backs? Says Structural. I can tell you something about that. There was a couple of things that I missed from last night from the Ben Jacobs show. Man United is serious about Diamonde, left winger. I think, speaking to sources, there's more substance in Diamonde to Man United than there is Anthony Gordon to Manchester United, who they both like. And also, Manchester United may sign a specialist right back or right wing back and a left winger who can also drop into left wing back position if necessary. I don't really get that because we're not really... That was also from Ben Jacobs. And I did read that and I was a bit confused because I was sort of like, well, we don't play with a left wing back anymore. And we don't play with a right wing back anymore. We play with wingers and fullbacks. So are we going to have a positional change again? I don't know. Also, Kieran Maguire put this out. I'll leave you with this. Latest documents filed in New York show that Manchester United have 777 million of borrowings, of which 295 million is due within 1 year, and they owe 422 million in transfer fee instalments, of which 238 million is due within 1 year. So on the transfers, we owe 238 million this year in transfers for players we've already bought. I think that will happen every year. I wouldn't be too scared by that, though. I mean, look, it's a lot of money, but I wouldn't be too scared with that because people would go, well, we can't spend 300 million then if we owe 238. But if you think about it, as long as you're clever with your accountancy, you could spend 300 million pounds on players, but only spend 100 million on year one. So I buy Elliot Anderson for 100, but I only pay 25 in year one. I buy Diamonde for 60, but I only play 15 in year one. That's 40. I buy Stiller for 60, but I only play 15 in year one. That's 75. So, yeah, we do owe 238 million pounds this year. It's a lot in transfer fees, but it doesn't prevent you spending money because you've got instalments, haven't you? Right. And Micha, Shard, Anderson, Stiller, Malik Diouf, says Stretford Signal. What about the Champions League draw? I completely forgot. I forgot about it. I will keep an eye on it. I'm not doing a stream about it. I actually completely forgot. That's what happens when you support Man United. You forget about Champions League draws. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. We've got Carrick's press conference with Beth at lunchtime. Let's see what he's got to say about injuries. I really want a positive update on De Ligt and Martinez. They're the two I want. Mason Mount is a yo-yo. And it's the preview tonight at 8 o'clock. And also, just in relation to Palace, I think we'll beat Palace anyway. But we're well, I didn't realise they were playing Thursday night football last night as well. They've got no chance on Sunday. We've had a whole week off and they played Thursday night football. So that's another positive for us. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. Brilliant show.